In this video, we will show you how to configure IcanALM phases. We will use a typical IcanALM setup as starting point to explain the different levels on which the value of the phase parameters can be defined. We'll talk about the parameter characteristics and will explain how to influence the order of precedence of the different values. In the second part of the video, we will show a concrete example in IcanALM. IcanALM phases are predefined, parameter-driven, reusable package building blocks. They represent specific tasks or actions that are executed to automate the lifecycle management process. Let's have a look at a typical configuration using IcanALM. We have two machines, and on each of them one or more environments have been defined. Machine 1, for example, is using 3 environments for build, test and acceptance, and machine 2 is used for production. Each environment uses one or more phases. When you import a phase into IcanALM, the initial parameter values from the script are set in the global definition of the phase. If you add the phase as is to an environment, those initial values will be used when running the phase. Of course, it's unlikely that all initial parameter values are correct for your configuration. So the first thing to do before linking the phase to any environment will be to verify the imported initial values and to adapt them where needed in the global definition of the phase. In our example, we use MySQL instead of Oracle. So first we modify the initial value and next we add the phase to the required environments. The value of the environment phase parameter is now set to MySQL. That will be the value used when creating a level request. You can further refine the value of the parameters by using machine parameters. Suppose one of the machines is using HSQLDB instead of MySQL. In that case, you can specify the value at machine level by creating a machine parameter. This machine parameter will be valid for that entire machine and must override the value of the environment phase parameter. You can refine even further by specifying the parameter value at environment level. In our example, machine 1 contains several environments, the build environment and the test and acceptance environments. The test environment uses a different database, namely DB2. So for that environment, we need to specify a different value at environment level. However, there is one hierarchical rule to respect. The environment phase parameter always takes precedence over the other defined parameters. As a consequence, in our example, MySQL would still be used when creating the level request, as that is the value of the environment phase parameter, which overrides the values of all other parameters. So, what to do to enforce the usage of the specific machine or environment parameter and to avoid them being overridden by the environment phase parameter? The solution is to replace the value of the environment phase parameter by a reference to the machine or environment parameter that must be used instead. The syntax to be used for this reference is a $, followed by, between curly brackets, the name of the replacing parameter. An extra advantage of machine and environment parameters is that they can be defined as dynamic parameters. This allows the user to choose the value of the parameter from the drop-down list at the moment he or she creates the level request. The name of the machine or environment parameter must be unique, as AND will not allow references to a parameter with the same name. We also recommend you to use the original parameter name preceded by the name of the machine or environment. That way it will be easier to track where the value used by the level request is taken from. In a nutshell, the definition of the phase parameters can be split up into the following steps. First, you import the phase into IcanALM. If the initial values are okay, you can use the phase as is. If not, you will first modify the initial values to make sure the correct values for your configuration will be used. Next, you link the phase to the build and/or deploy environments where you want to use the phase. The initial value will be set as the value of the environment phase parameter. This value will be used when you execute the phase. You can refine the parameter values on machine and environment level by creating respectively a machine or an environment parameter. If required, you can also make them dynamic. To make sure that the value of those parameters is used instead of the value of the environment phase parameter, you replace that value by a reference to the machine or environment parameter. In the remaining of this video, we will show you a practical example of how the value is specified on the different levels in IcanALM. For this video, we will use as an example the update database phase. We will explain how you define the parameter values at different levels in ICANN-ALM, what the recommended way of working is, and how you can make parameters dynamic. First, we'll have a look at the global definition of the phase after we imported it in ICANN-ALM. Go to the Phases overview in the Global Administration section and click the Edit icon in front of the phase. All parameters with their initial values will be displayed. The initial value for the rdbms.type parameter, for example, is set to Oracle. When the phase is added to an environment, this initial value will become the value of the environment phase parameter, which will be used when creating a level request for the environment. As in our example, we do not use Oracle but MySQL, we will modify the initial value of the parameter before adding the phase to an environment so that the correct value is used. Edit the parameter, enter the correct value, and click Save. So let's have a look at one of the environments using the phase. In the Project Administration section, edit the project, select Deploy Environments Overview from the submenu, click the Edit Phases icon in front of an environment on the list, and select the View Parameters icon in front of the Update Database phase. As you can see, the value of the environment phase parameter is set to MySQL. Another level where you can specify the value of a parameter is the machine level. In our example, we have two machines, each using a different database. doc.alm, which is using MySQL, and ICANN-demo 004, which is using HSQLDB. In this case, it's useful to define a machine parameter for the second machine, which will be valid for all the environments on that entire machine. However, as you will remember, the environment phase parameter takes precedence over the machine parameter. So we have to make sure that the value of our machine parameter will not be overridden by the value of the environment phase parameter. The first step is to create a machine parameter with unique name. Select Machine Parameters from the Machines submenu and click the Create Machine Parameter icon in front of the machine name. In the key field, you fill out the name of the parameter. It is important to carefully choose the name of this new parameter. We recommend you to use the same name as the original parameter, preceded by the machine name. This way it will be easy to track where the value is coming from. Enter the value. Optionally, you can enter a description. For example, stating which phase is using the machine parameter. If the original phase parameter is mandatory, this machine parameter should be set to mandatory as well. Click the Create button to confirm the creation. The parameter will be added to the overview. Next, you have to make sure that for all environments on the machine, the value of the machine parameter will be used instead of the current value of the environment phase parameter. To do so, we can use the Mass Edit feature in the Global Administration section. Go to the Phases overview in the Global Administration section and edit the Update Database phase. Click the Mass Edit icon in front of the rdbms.type parameter. Select the environments on the ICANN-demo 004 machine, in our case all environments except for the production environment, which is defined on another machine. Set the value for selection to $, ICANN-demo004v.rdbms.type and close the curly bracket. Click Set and confirm the action. Next, we will create a level request and have a look at the parameter values that will be used. Go to your desktop and click the Create Level Request. We add a description and click the Create button. When the level request has ended, we click its OID, which brings us to the detailed overview. In the phase logs, we can select the Deploy phase and next the Update Database phase. Use the Phase Parameters link to display the used parameters and their values. Here we can see that the machine parameter has been used. To know the exact value, we open the Deploy Parameters link, and there we see that the actual value was HSQLDB. Parameters can be refined even further by defining their value on environment level. Here the same principle applies as for the machine parameters. The environment parameters are also overridden by the environment phase parameters, unless you specify them the way we just explained for the machine parameters. In our example, the test environment uses a different database type. Therefore, it's interesting to create a specific environment parameter for that environment. To do so, we return to the project administration section and edit the demo project. Next, we select Deploy Parameters from the Deploy Environments submenu, and we click the Create Parameter icon in front of our test environment. The procedure is the same as for the machine parameter. Enter the name of the parameter. As this is an environment parameter, we will use the name of the environment as prefix for the parameter name. Enter the value, enter the description, set the parameter to mandatory, and click Create. Next, we go to the environment phase parameter definition on the Deploy Environments overview. Click the Edit Phases icon in front of the Test Deploy environment, and next the View Parameters icon in front of the Update Database phase, and set the value of the parameter to refer to the environment parameter. If we now create a level request, the value of the environment parameter will be used instead of the value of the machine parameter. So far, we have modified the initial value of the phase parameter, which has become the default value of the environment phase parameter. We have created a machine parameter, which will be used for the entire IcanDemo 004V machine, and for one particular environment on that machine, we have created a separate environment parameter. An overview of the different parameter values used for all the environments connected to a phase can be found in the Mass Edit window of the environment phase parameter. For our first machine containing the production environment, the value of the environment phase parameter is still being used. On the second machine, the machine parameter value is used for all environments except for the test environment, which uses the environment parameter value. There is one more interesting feature we would like to demonstrate in this video: the usage of editable and dynamic parameters. This feature is only available for machine and environment parameters and not for environment phase parameters. Making a parameter dynamic allows the user to choose its value at the moment the level request is created. When a parameter value is editable, the value can be entered by the user when creating the level request. In the example of the testDeploy.rdbms.type parameter, a list of databases could be provided so that the user can choose the appropriate database at the moment he or she creates the level request. We go back to the Deploy Parameters overview for our project. Edit the environment parameter we created previously, activate the dynamic option, and replace the fixed value in the value field by the list of available databases separated by a semicolon. The first value in the list will be the default value, the first value in the drop-down list. If we now go to our desktop and create a level request, the environment parameter is displayed in the Editable Parameters section, and we can select the required database from a drop-down list. We hope this video has been helpful. If you still have questions, or if you would like to discuss any specific requirements, you can always contact our specialists or attend one of our webinars. Thank you for watching.